Thank you, Doctor, and good afternoon, Tucson. I would like to take credit for the fact that I was born here in Tucson, but I got lucky. You don't get to pick your parents, but my parents, Pat and Mo, loved this community, loved Arizona, and it's always wonderful to be back. I want to thank you, Doctor, for that gracious introduction, and I think it goes without saying that I'm truly honored and humbled to be here with you today, 1 year after the terrible events of January 8th, 2010. And I want to thank I should say 2011 rather. And I want to also thank my good dear friend, Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, who asked me to speak today on her behalf. And I want to also extend that gratitude to her wonderful husband, Captain Mark Kelly, and their extended family. You know, many of us know the Congresswoman as Gabby. And it sure stirs in me a great range of emotions to be back here in Tucson. And one of them is a sense of pride in her and in all of you. And yes, there is a lot of sadness associated on this 1 year anniversary. But I feel a spirit of hope and of optimism. And I believe we have an opportunity, a crucial opportunity to learn from the example that Gabby has set, that the other victims and their families have set, that this resilient community of Tucson has set. When I was invited to speak, I just jumped at the chance, and I think you all can imagine there are many reasons why. First and most importantly, I couldn't wait to see my friend Gabby. I visited her down in Houston, and I couldn't wait to see her in Tucson, and I hope we can hear the song Beautiful Day at some point here today and watch her take it in. Moreover, I'm here because the outpouring of support that brought our nation together in the days following the tragedy here in Tucson presents an ideal opportunity to talk about a question that should unite us, Americans. How can we and our Congress work together more effectively to meet what are historic challenges for our nation? Gabby's hallmark has always been her persistent work across the aisle for the good of Arizonans, and her example is a touchstone for the remarks I want to make today. And as the doctor suggested, there's a personal reason I'm here, because it gives me an excuse to return to my boyhood home of Tucson. I'm a graduate of Canyon del Oro High School. All right. Now this is going to pain me because that was 1968. If you do the math, you can figure out how old I am, but I got to say, go Dorados. Go Dorados. And I have a wonderful memory of a year ago and 2 months campaigning with Gabby, and we went out to CDO and were so welcomed there, and the memories flooded back. You know, I love the fact in this community that people have been here for so many generations. And I think that's why the people in Tucson responded with such resilience to what happened. The people of Tucson are the people who braved the Sonoran Desert to build a city in an arid land, surrounded by mountains, dotted by both the majestic Saguaro and the fierce Cholla. You know, my family, the Udalls, came to Arizona 150 years ago. And as Dr. Carmona mentioned, my Uncle Stuart and then my father, Mo, had the privilege of representing Tucson in the House of Representatives. Dad was elected in 1961 in a special election. He ran against the same opponent my Uncle Stuart faced just a few months earlier, and his cry, my father's opponent's cry, was, "One Udall in Washington is enough. Don't send another one there." But my dad survived a close election and had the great honor of serving for 30 years, from 1961 to 1991, in the U.S. House of Representatives. Dad was a proud Democrat. But those of you who know Arizona history know there are a lot of Republican Udalls as well. And like most Westerners, he was raised with an ethic that you looked out for your neighbor and you worked for the good of your community. Why was that so? Well, in the end, Mother Nature didn't give a damn about your political party. And some argued that my dad's liberal-minded politics put him at odds with his home state. But his progressive political beliefs never deterred him from being a consensus builder. He was the senior congressman from Arizona when John McCain was first elected to the House, and John McCain described himself as a freshman right-winger. Sounds pretty intense, doesn't it? If you know John McCain, you know. But my dad saw an opportunity to work across the aisle and form a friendship. And as John McCain puts it, Mo reached out to me in 50 different ways. There's no way that Mo could have been more wonderful. And John McCain has paid Mo's gift of friendship to him forward to me, Mo's son in the United States Senate. And Gabby Giffords conducts herself in the same way. She's a bridge builder, and if Mo Udall were still alive today, he'd be Gabby's biggest fan. But he's not with us, so that makes me Gabby's biggest fan. When Gabby was first elected to the House in 2006, she promised that she would not go to Washington as an ideologue. She was crystal clear about her independence, saying, "I will always extend my hands across the aisle to do what's right for the American people, to build consensus, and to get the job done." Words matter, and Gabby's words are powerful and refreshing, aren't they? She has a magical way with words, a direct and friendly way of expressing herself while she's looking you in the eyes. She's also a great listener. If you've talked with Gabby, and I think everybody here has, you know what I mean. And although Gabby may now struggle with her words at times, we know what she's trying to say. Again, it's a simple concept. Words matter. And these days, we don't hear our elected officials using words that bring us together. Instead, words too often are used as weapons. Or sometimes people do say the right words, but then they don't carry them out. And that's what brings me to my central question today. How can we find common ground for the good of our country? I've served doctor in the United States Congress for 13 years now. I'm not sure if that qualifies me for sainthood or sentencing. But I've never seen the level of political infighting that there is today. Our great nation is facing unparalleled challenges. Just think about it: a weak economy, a skyrocketing debt, a shrinking middle class, an ongoing war, and Americans who've lost faith in their political leadership. And all the while, the Congress is gridlocked. We lurch from one manufactured political crisis to the next. We talk past each other, not with each other. And that's what Gabby tackled as a congresswoman. And here's how she described the challenge for Congress a few years ago. She said, "We have to work out our problems by negotiating, working together, hopefully Democrats and Republicans. The reality is that we've got to focus on the policy. Leaders need to stand back when things get too fired up and say, 'Whoa, let's take a step back.'" But I have to tell you, it's hard to take a step back in our modern, media-driven, 24/7 political system. If you think about it, political fights have become the ultimate reality show. But even reality shows are edited, except for the one in Washington, D.C. Think if they didn't edit the Kardashians, by the way. There are many factors that fuel this new dynamic. We have a political system where election results are often based on how much money you can raise. And in order to raise a lot of money, candidates have to break through the clutter and get noticed. And it seems like the only way these days to get noticed quickly is to make an incendiary statement. Moderate, reasonable-sounding statements are not going to get you on television or motivate your supporters to give money. So the crazier sounding, the better, even if it means attacking your opponents. And once you get elected, the money race never stops. Off you go to a fundraising event when you could be listening to your constituents or building stronger relationships with your colleagues. Gone are the days when members of Congress would have a friendly barbecue, bring along their kids to play with each other, and get to know each other better. These opportunities to make lasting friendships have all but disappeared. And let's face it, it's a lot easier to demonize somebody if you don't know him or her, if you don't walk by that person on the proverbial main street. So what do? How can we honestly debate, disagree over goals and philosophies without being disagreeable and then collaborate. A few days after last year's shootings, President Obama came to Tucson. You all remember that well, and what a powerful speech he gave, not just to you here or those of us in Colorado, but all Americans at the McHale Center. He spoke about partisanship and the power of words. He said, at a time when our discourse has become so sharply polarized, at a time when we are far too eager to lay blame for all that ails the world at the feet of those who happen to think differently than we do, it's important for us to pause for a moment and make sure that we're talking with each other in a way that heals, not in a way that wounds. President Obama urged us to action. As we discuss these issues, he said, let us, each of us, do so with a dose of humility. Rather than pointing fingers or assigning blame, let us use this occasion to expand our moral imaginations, to listen to each other more carefully, to sharpen our instincts for empathy, and to remind ourselves of all the ways that our hopes and dreams are bound together. With his words, Gabby, and Tucson in mind, I decided shortly after the shootings to push for something that had been never done at the President's annual State of the Union address. I called for members of both political parties to literally cross the aisle and sit with a member of the opposing party. I wasn't sure what the reaction would be. I wasn't sure what the reaction would be to such a symbolic idea, but I thought it was worth a try. And lo and behold, for the first time in modern times, members of Congress sat interspersed throughout the chamber without regard to ideology or political party. And many people made new friends that night. As I walked from the Senate chamber with a Republican from South Carolina, Jim DeMint, through the great rotunda to the House of Representatives, I remember wishing that Gabby was there. And as I took my seat, my emotions raw, I saw Gabby's empty seat between Congressman Flake and Grijalva, and it hit me. Gabby was there. And I believe that for a while last year, our political discourse did get better. I saw my colleagues working extra time to choose their words more carefully, trying to give their opponents the benefit of the doubt. They were using the Gabby Giffords model of doing things. But it didn't take long for Congress, for all of us, to slip back into our old ways. I wish there were some simple solutions to reduce the partisanship and keep Congress focused on solving the huge challenges, which, by the way, I think are opportunities as well, that confront our country. But not too many things in life are simple. So like I said earlier, I've been doing some thinking and some listening about what reforms are needed to get Congress back on track. And I think there's some things we could do, a few steps we could take to improve the situation. Some are easy, while some are hard. I'd like to share a couple of them with you. For the House of Representatives, we need congressional districts that are drawn fairly. Right now, gerrymandered districts where congressmen have safe seats for life encourage extremism. Perpetually safe congressmen and women can drift away from finding common ground. For the United States Senate, where I'm so honored to serve, we need to reform our filibuster rules. The rules are increasingly abused to block anything Americans may want us to do. How about returning to the requirement of an old-style filibuster, where a senator is required to stand on the Senate floor and argue his objections in front of the nation? Right now, obstructionism robs the American people of healthy, needed debates and legislation that can help our country. How about reforming our campaign finance laws? Right now, members of Congress spend far too much time having to raise money for their elections, and that takes us away from our important work. And under our current system, certain entities can give unlimited dollars to candidates drowning out the voices of regular folks. The Supreme Court decision in 1976 equated speech with money. My good friend Congressman Zach Wamp from Tennessee, a Republican, said, if speech is money, a lot of Americans aren't being heard. Further, I'd like to encourage what I call a virtuous cycle. What if the American people rose up and said, we are only going to elect people who work across the political divide, who don't demonize their opponents, and who collaborate to actually solve problems. Imagine if more and more of these people were elected. A new political model could develop, and obstructionism would wither on the vine. Now, lest you think I'm a hopeless romantic, and I've been accused of that, and have forgotten politics is a rough business, let me say we need partisans. I'm a proud partisan. But my Republican friend from Tennessee, Senator Lamar Alexander, recently said, the goal isn't bipartisanship, it's results. And I agree, but bipartisanship is the only way to get results. Like those two old partisans back in the 80s, Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. They delivered because they got results. And I have to tell you, I think you can have way too much partisanship, but you can never have enough bipartisanship. And finally, once in a while, let's ask members of opposite parties to get together, to get to know each other. And it's one reason that I will again call on members of Congress to reach across the aisle at the upcoming State of the Union address in a few weeks. It may be a symbolic act, but it sends a message that's a pure Gabby Giffords message. Put aside your differences, and let's play for the red, white, and blue team. These are just a few ideas. I welcome ideas from you and those across the country, but we have to continue this national dialogue because the stakes are so high. Gabby understands this. She's one of the wisest friends I have. And you know, I'm a believer that wisdom's acquired when you expand your horizons, you challenge yourself, and you learn from others. Gabby is a daughter of the desert, and she has a life full of experiences. Experiences have expanded her horizons. How many people do you know that you can say are a congresswoman, the wife of an astronaut, a stepmom, a cowgirl, a biker chick, a business leader, and a Fulbright scholar? And she's only just begun. And as President Obama noticed, in Gabby, he said, we see a reflection of our public spiritedness, desire to participate in that sometimes frustrating, sometimes contentious, but always necessary and never-ending process to form a more perfect union. I say let us strive towards a more perfect union. Let us demand that our elected leaders get results. And I say that as a Westerner, because I know that we particularly treasure independence, and we have little time for brooding pessimism. The great Western writer Wallace Stegner put it best when he wrote about people he called stickers. Those are the people who settled the West against all odds and obstacles. He called them stickers because they didn't leave the scene of a challenge. Instead, they stuck to the land because of their spirit, their courage, and their hopes for a better community. This little pueblo, this Tucson, is a city of stickers. And now it's up to us in the Congress to be stickers too. In these historic times, the American people should be able to count on their elected leaders. Sure, we can be fierce political opponents, but in the end, we're not enemies, we're fellow Americans. So we owe it to ourselves, to our children, and especially to our friends who were senselessly mowed down just a year ago, who were just being citizens, who were just pursuing a better union, a more perfect union. We owe it to all of them to rise to the occasion. And if I say, if not now, when? And let's do it in a way that will make Gabby Giffords proud. Thank you.